December 14th, 2025. For 17 hours, 112 nautical miles north of La Guaira, Venezuela, over the Caribbean Sea. The R1135 rivet joint was climbing through 18,000 feet, its 4 Allison turboprops droning steadily in the darkness before dawn. Call sign Gizmo 71, the 105-foot aircraft of gray aluminum and highly sensitive electronics moved through the humid Caribbean air at 328 knots, carrying both weight and purpose. Inside the fuselage, 24 intelligence specialists worked in near silence over glowing displays. Linguists, cryptographers, and electronic warfare technicians listened through headsets alive with intercepted Venezuelan military traffic, while the aircraft's dish antennas collected every electromagnetic signal they could reach within a 200 nautical mile radius. This was far from a routine surveillance mission. For the past 3 weeks, the United States had been testing and mapping Venezuela's air defense network, triggering radar activity, recording electronic patterns, and assembling a detailed picture of surface-to-air missile positions, command centers, and the frequencies used by the Maduro government to coordinate its defenses. Tonight's operation went farther than any previous flight. The rivet joint was set to remain for 6 hours along the edge of Venezuelan airspace, gathering signals intelligence more detailed than anything a satellite could capture. But Caracas had been watching carefully. At 4:22, Venezuela launched 8 fighter jets from 2 different air bases. 4 Su-30MK, 2 flankers took off from Libertador Air Base near Maracay, their twin Saturn AL-31F engines roaring as they surged into the night. 4 older F-16 Fighting Falcons lifted from El Libertador, 130 kilometers to the west. The flankers were the centerpiece of Venezuela's fighter fleet. Twin-engine air superiority aircraft acquired from Russia in 2006 at roughly $40 million apiece. They could reach Mach 2 and carried R-77 beyond visual range missiles along with R-73 infrared seekers. Their objective was clear: intercept the American surveillance plane, push it away from Venezuelan waters, and make it clear that the Caribbean was not open ground for outside pressure. What the Venezuelan pilots did not realize was that the slow reconnaissance aircraft was not operating by itself. 2 FA-18E Super Hornets from the USS Gerald R. Ford had been trailing the rivet joint ever since it departed San Juan, Puerto Rico, 3 hours earlier. They flew in complete electronic silence, with radar disabled, transponders dark, and only passive sensors in use. Their AN/APG-79A ESA radars remained inactive, giving Venezuelan early warning systems nothing to detect. The Super Hornets held at 31,000 feet, 8,000 feet above, and 20 kilometers behind the reconnaissance aircraft, unseen by radar stations from Caracas to Havana. Their call signs were Viper 1 and Viper 2. Each jet carried 9 air-to-air missiles, 4 AIM-9X, Block 2 sidewinders mounted on the outer wing pylons, with infrared seekers able to lock on through the pilot's helmet-mounted display, and 5 AIM-120D AMRAAMs under the wings and centerline, each capable of engaging targets at distances beyond 160 kilometers. In Navy terms, this was known as the Murder Hornet loadout, a configuration built for maximum air-to-air dominance in moments exactly like this. The Venezuelan pilots were about to understand what that meant. At 4:31, at 22,000 feet, Lieutenant Colonel Rafael Mendoza led the flanker formation. His Su-30's powerful BARS radar had already locked onto the American reconnaissance aircraft. At 140 kilometers, the target appeared large, slow, and unprotected. At least that was what the radar suggested. His orders were specific: close to visual range, photograph the American aircraft, pass close enough to intimidate the crew, and force it to turn back toward Puerto Rico. This was meant to be a standard show of pressure, the kind of intercept Venezuela had carried out many times over the past decade. Move in fast, get close, make the Americans back off. But something kept pulling at Mendoza's attention. The RC-135 was flying a neat, predictable racetrack pattern, almost too calmly, as if it had no concern about being watched, almost as if it wanted to be noticed. His wingman's voice broke through the radio. "Radar shows no escort. The Americans are getting careless." Mendoza said nothing. His eyes stayed on the scope. In 30 years of flying, he had learned that instinct often caught what instruments missed. And at that moment, every instinct he had was telling him the same thing: something was off. 47 kilometers to the northeast, Commander Sarah Chen tracked the Venezuelan formation through her AN/APG-79 AESA radar. The Block 3 Super Hornet sensors displayed all 8 incoming fighters with remarkable clarity. 4 flankers and 4 F-16S moving in 2 loose groups. She switched to the encrypted tactical frequency. Gizmo 71, Viper 1. We have 8 bandits inbound, bearing 215, 112 clicks and closing. Confirm weapons-free status. The reply came at once from the Rivet Joint's mission commander. Viper 1, Gizmo 71. Weapons-free authority confirmed. ROE Alpha. You are cleared to engage if hostile intent is shown. Behind her oxygen mask, Chen allowed herself a faint smile. The rules were straightforward. Any Venezuelan aircraft that placed weapons targeting radar on the American reconnaissance plane would be treated as a direct threat. And the flankers were only moments away from doing exactly that. She called her wingman. Viper 2, weapons hot. Let them come closer. The setup was complete. At 4:38, Mendoza's formation closed to 60 kilometers. His radar warning receiver stayed quiet. The F-16S had split away and were now approaching from the southwest, boxing in the American aircraft with a standard intercept pattern designed to pressure the target toward Venezuelan airspace or force it to turn away. At 45 kilometers, Mendoza activated his target illumination radar. The powerful N011M pulse Doppler system locked onto the rivet joint almost instantly, feeding targeting information to his R-77 missiles. The moment he flipped that switch, the situation changed. 47 kilometers to the northeast, a sharp tone sounded inside Chen's cockpit. Her passive sensors had detected the flanker's targeting radar. Hostile lock, weapons free. She pressed the trigger. 2 AIM-12OD missiles launched from their rails at tremendous speed, surging forward and accelerating rapidly. Chen had fired from beyond visual range, using the Super Hornet's AESA radar to guide the missiles through the middle phase of flight before handing them over to their own onboard seekers. Mendoza never had a clear picture of what was coming. His warning receivers suddenly lit up, but by then, the missiles were already seconds away. The first missile hit his wingman's flanker near the left engine intake. The aircraft broke apart at 23,000 feet, sending burning fragments across a wide stretch of ocean. The second missile locked onto Mendoza. He threw the Su-30 into a hard defensive turn, releasing chaff and flares as his G-suit tightened around his legs. The missile detonated just meters from the tail, tearing apart the starboard horizontal stabilizer. The aircraft rolled out of control as warning lights flooded the cockpit. Eject, eject. He reached for the yellow handle between his legs. The canopy separated and the ejection seat launched, throwing him into the cold Caribbean darkness at 400 knots. Behind him, the damaged flanker spun down toward the sea. 2 flankers were gone in 12 seconds, and the confrontation was only beginning. What happens when the 6 remaining Venezuelan fighters realize they are being tracked by opponents they cannot even detect? That answer changes the balance of air power in the Caribbean. Part 2 coming soon. 4:39 hours. 112 nautical miles north of La Guaira, Venezuela. 2 Venezuelan flankers had just been knocked out of the sky. Their squadron commander was descending somewhere in the darkness below, hanging beneath a parachute, and the 6 remaining aircraft still had no idea where the missiles had come from. Confusion spread instantly through the formation. The surviving jets broke apart in different directions as their radar warning receivers erupted with threat tones. At the same moment, the 2 Super Hornets ended their electronic silence. Their AESA radar switched on, flooding the airspace with precise targeting data. The Venezuelan F-16S reacted first. They turned south almost immediately. Those aircraft carried no long-range missiles. The Israeli-built Python 4 infrared weapons under their wings were only effective at close range, and at nearly 50 kilometers, they were useless. Staying in the fight would mean flying straight into danger. The 2 remaining flankers tried to press the engagement. It was a decision they would not have time to regret. Chen's wingman, Lieutenant James Ortega, already had the targets tracked. 4 AIM-120 AMRAAM missiles were ready. He launched 3 in rapid sequence. One of the flanker pilots managed to defeat the first incoming missile using chaff and aggressive maneuvering. The second pilot wasn't as fortunate. The AMRAAM struck the cockpit area directly. There was no ejection, no long trail of debris, only a sudden flash of orange that hung in the air for a few seconds before fading toward the dark ocean below. The last flanker pilot, Captain Elena Vargas, broke sharply to the right and dove toward the sea. She was considered one of the most skilled combat pilots in the Venezuelan Air Force. But skill could not change the situation. Ortega already had an AIM-9X Sidewinder tracking the heat signature of her engines. The missile launched at high speed, its thrust vectoring system constantly adjusting its path dozens of times every second. Vargas saw the brief flash reflected in her canopy mirror. She knew exactly what it meant. She ejected just over a second before the Sidewinder detonated behind her aircraft. The entire engagement had lasted only 94 seconds. 4 Venezuelan fighters destroyed, 2 pilots lost, 2 now in the water awaiting rescue. No American aircraft damaged. At 4:51, the report reached Caracas. President Nicolas Maduro received the news inside the underground command bunker beneath Miraflores Palace. 4 aircraft gone, 2 pilots dead, an entire interception group eliminated in less than 2 minutes. And the American reconnaissance plane was still calmly flying its circular patrol route as if nothing had happened. Defense Minister Vladimir Padrino Lopez stood rigidly nearby. The Americans had escort fighters we could not detect, he said carefully. Our pilots never saw them. Maduro's anger was impossible to hide. We have 21 flankers, he said sharply. The most advanced fighters in Latin America, and 2 American jets just destroyed 4 of them. Padrino chose his next words with care. Sir, their Block 3 Super Hornets use AESA radar. They can track our aircraft for more than 150 kilometers while remaining nearly impossible to detect. The missiles were launched from far outside visual range. Our pilots never had an opportunity to respond. The room fell silent. Maduro stared at the situation map on the wall. Several red markers now showed the approximate positions where the aircraft had gone down. The cost of the encounter was enormous. 4 Su-30MK-2 flankers, each valued at around $62 million. 2 R-77 missiles launched without effect. 2 highly trained pilots lost after years of preparation abroad. Total Venezuelan losses, roughly $253 million. American losses, 6 missiles valued at about $4.8 million, a difference of roughly 52 to 1. And the reconnaissance mission had continued without interruption. At 6 o'clock, the RC-135 completed its final orbit and turned north toward Puerto Rico. Its recording systems now contained more than 18 hours of signals intelligence, radar frequencies, communication channels, and electronic details about Venezuela's air defense network. The 2 Super Hornets followed at a careful distance, each still carrying 5 remaining missiles. Between them, they had fired only 7. The entire encounter had lasted less than 2 minutes. By the time the sun rose, the Pentagon had already scheduled another reconnaissance flight for 48 hours later. The numbers told a clear story. Venezuela's Air Force, once considered one of the strongest in Latin America, had just experienced the most devastating air encounter in its history. 8 fighters were launched, 4 were lost. A 50% attrition rate in a single encounter without a single confirmed hit on an American aircraft. Not one successful missile shot, not one effective weapons lock. They never even reached the point where they could seriously challenge their opponent. Defense analysts later described it as the most one-sided air engagement in the Western Hemisphere since the Falklands War. Decades of Venezuelan military spending, including more than $200 million in Russian-built aircraft, had been neutralized in just 94 seconds by 2 American jets priced at about $67 million each. The numbers were unforgiving. It was like showing up with outdated tools against an opponent who could track your every move in the dark before you even knew the contest had begun. But the larger strategic impact was even more serious. Venezuela's remaining flankers were grounded for an indefinite period while investigators tried to understand exactly what had happened. The F-16 fleet, already weakened by years of spare parts shortages tied to U.S. sanctions, could not fill the gap. Even the country's much-publicized S-300 surface-to-air missile batteries proved ineffective against low-flying carrier-based aircraft operating about 100 kilometers offshore. Maintenance records exposed the deeper reality of Venezuelan air power. Of the 21 Su-30 Mk-2s on paper, only around 13 were believed to be flight-ready at any given time. Many onboard systems were unreliable. Spare parts from Russia were arriving months late. Pilot training hours had dropped far below NATO standards because of fuel shortages. That night forced the Maduro government to confront a lesson many militaries already understand. Military strength is not measured by how many aircraft appear on inventory lists. It is measured by how many crews are truly prepared, how many weapons function as intended, and how quickly you can detect the other side before they detect you. Against the United States Navy, with its carrier strike groups, advanced sensor systems, and pilots who log more flight training in a month than some Venezuelan pilots may see in a year, that equation became painfully clear. And once that number starts dropping, it can fall fast. The reconnaissance flights continued every 48 hours for the next 3 weeks. Venezuela did not send up a single interceptor. The reason was simple. They had already seen what happened when they tried. Some confrontations are decided by missiles and gunfire. Others are decided by silence, restraint, and the lasting image of wreckage disappearing into dark water. This one was effectively settled before it fully unfolded. The American surveillance aircraft had served as the bait. The Super Hornets had been the hidden edge of the operation, and Venezuela had stepped directly into the setup. 52-1. That was the exchange ratio. There is an old truth in military circles: expensive hardware alone does not make a force dangerous. Training does, tactics do, experience does. Venezuela had invested billions in Russian equipment. The United States had spent decades mastering how to counter it. That night, the Caribbean saw the difference.